All right, so I think we're recording now, so everybody has to be on your good behavior.
Oh.
So the topic for this little workshop and advanced training is building bridges, having to do with the relationships that we have with our readers. In our sessions, that's probably the primary place that we think of during our sessions. Outside of our sessions, and then some thought, some thinking about connecting readers to communities of faith. Those three areas. I did try to put in the chat section, if you have access to that, a handout. I know it's much better to get such a handout before a session like this starts, but that's there for you. You should be able to download it. And if you don't see it or can't get to it, then just I can also email it back to everybody. So I apologize for not getting that out. What's that?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't either.
let's try one more time.
Here we go.
Oh,
Okay. I did it before we started, so I guess it wanted people to actually be in the meeting there. Well, so this is just the big topic is relationships, and so I want to take a few minutes to just remind us about why that's an important part of what we're doing, and then do a little bit of group work. So we'll just break into three very small groups and do some group work to generate some ideas around how we develop relationships in our sessions, outside of our sessions, and then again, coming back to this idea of connecting readers with communities of faith, which when we're working with readers locally or in person, that question is easier. The ideas around that topic are easier to generate than when we're talking about working with readers online. So I would acknowledge it's a tougher topic in terms of working with readers online, but I'm very interested in generating ideas with you guys about that. So doing a little bit of group work would be the second thing, and then just one small summary core principle that we might use to keep reminding ourselves about the importance of building relationships. And just sort of as a heads up, that core principle, and it's written in the handout, and I'll put it on a slide in just a second, but maybe as a summary, that we build bridges with our readers. We build relationships with our readers by seeing them as valuable and treating them as valuable. So, I mean, that's not earth-shaking. That's something you know, but it's a reminder to us that building relationships has a doing component, an action component, as well as a thinking component. And both of those matter a lot. So I'll come back to that principle in a few minutes. But let me put some slides up here to start us along. Well, let me share my screen first. All right. We see one slide now?
Yes.
Okay. So let me touch base on this overall. Why is it important? Why is our relationship with our reader important? Why does that matter at all? And again, I think, you could probably identify reasons why it matters. So I'm just reminding us. First is that it's a key component of doing Let's Start Talking. It's a core part of the Let's Start Talking approach. Just as if we said, well, I'm going to do Let's Start Talking, but I'm not going to read scripture, we would say, well, that's not really doing a Let's Start Talking session then. So just as we might say that, we could also say, well, if we're not working on the relationship with our reader, then we're not really doing the LST approach. Doesn't mean we're bad people or anything, but just it's so much a part of the idea of Let's Start Talking that it's right at the core of it. So, for example, you remember these core phrases of the philosophy that, so the word is the teacher. What's the other part of that? If we say the word is the teacher,
For the example.
okay, we're the example or the illustration.
Yes.
So that's one of the summaries of the philosophy of LST, is that we are, the word is the teacher, but we are the illustration. So that part, that we are the illustration, is a reminder about relationships, where we have an important part in the process. Or another example is this phrase, we share Jesus and we share, how does that finish out?
Our lives.
We share our lives or ourselves. Okay, so when we summarize what we're doing in the Let's Start Talking session, one way we say that is, well, we're sharing Jesus and we're sharing ourselves. So it's just as sharing Jesus is critical, so is sharing ourselves. And then the last phrase or summary that we often use when we're talking about the philosophy is we say something along the lines of, a friendly relationship is more productive than a teacher-student relationship. And that idea of flattening down the relationships, not having teacher-student, but pushing the relationship down so it's friend to friend, because that's actually helpful both in terms of language development as well as faith development, because you're creating an atmosphere where anxiety is lowered by creating a friend-to-friend relationship. And the lower someone's anxiety is, the more likely they're willing to try difficult things with language, to practice language, to speak out loud, to say words they don't know, because you've created this safe environment. And then likewise, then it can often be easier for people to explore matters of faith, which can be difficult matters for a non-believer or a doubtful believer. If they have a safe space to explore that, then it may be an easier thing for them to do. So when we treat people friend to friend, it's often a more productive experience for them. So my only point there, number one, is that it's part of the heart of Let's Start Talking. Why is it important to work on relationships? Well, because that's what we said we're going to do if we say we're doing Let's Start Talking. When we work on the relationship with our reader, we know that we're doing Let's Start Talking. Just as when we use scripture as the basis for our conversations, we know that we're doing Let's Start Talking. The second reason is that it helps the doubtful find a reason to trust. It helps the doubtful find a reason to trust. So I was reminded of this scripture in 2 Corinthians. When Paul is writing here, he's got a credibility problem. There are some people in his audience that don't really trust him, and they don't really trust what he's saying. And so this is the Message translation, so it's a paraphrase. So he says, does it sound like we're patting ourselves on the back, insisting on our credentials, asserting our authority? Well, we're not. Neither do we need letters of endorsement, either from you or to you or from you. You yourselves are all the endorsement we need. Your very lives are a letter that anyone can read by just looking at you. Christ himself wrote it, not with ink, but with God's living spirit, not chiseled into stone, but carved into human lives, and we publish it. We couldn't be more sure of ourselves in this, that you, written by Christ himself for God, are our letter of recommendation. We couldn't think of writing this kind of letter about ourselves. Only God could write such a letter. His letter authorizes us to help carry out this new plan of action. Plan wasn't written out with ink on paper, with pages and pages of legal footnotes killing the spirit. It's written with spirit on spirit, his life on our lives. So one way of reading this is Paul is saying, well, if you don't trust me or what I say, then consider the lives of the people that I've influenced. And if that's true for Paul, maybe it's true for God. If somebody doubts God or doubts what God says, maybe they should consider the lives of some people that God has influenced, which would be you, which would be us. So for some readers, maybe for most readers, our lives become the evidence upon which someone might consider the worthfulness of God. So, and I know you know that, the reminder here is that relationships matter because it can help the doubtful find a reason to trust God. Okay? So, just to state that before we dive into some group work, to remind ourselves that what we're talking about here, relational things can and often do happen organically and naturally in the process of working with our readers. But I think it's important from time to time to remember why that's important and how important it is in the process here. So let's jump in and do some group work, some group thinking here. And I think I'll just break us into 3 small groups and I'll participate in this as well. What I want us to do is think about just practically, so how do we develop relationships? How do we work on our relationship with our reader? Number one, in or during a session. So that'll be one group. Or outside of a reading session, between the sessions, is there anything we can do to develop relationships? That'll be a second group. And then the third group, just take some time just to think about how can we build a bridge between the reader and a community of faith, for example, when that's possible. And all of these, as I said, could have a on-site or online component. If I think most of us are working with readers online completely, solely through LST Connect. If we had people doing FriendSpeak, working with a reader in person, sometimes there's some different answers to these questions if you're working with somebody in person. So we might just keep that in mind when we're generating some ideas. So let me stop this screen here. So I think we're gonna take about 10 minutes and go into groups, and each group will take just one of these topics and generate ideas on how can we develop relationships in this area. So okay, so group 1, what are the things that we can do practically to build relationships during a reading session? What did you guys come up with?
You want to go ahead, Tariana?
I was going to ask you if you wanted to start. I love the connection that you made with your reader. It was just so beautiful. I think we shared a lot of really cool points, but if you want to start and then I'll jump in after, that's totally
Okay.
fine.
One of the things that Tariana brought up, and then, I agreed with and we expounded on, is just letting the conversation flow naturally.
Mm-hmm.
We start out visiting and talking about our lives, and Christine is an artist, and so she talks about the paintings that she does of Christian women and how they reflect the attributes that the women had. And it's, meaningful to her, and then it's really meaningful to me too because of her perspective.
Mm.
And it's the same thing with her cosmetology that she's doing. Doing braids turned inwards is a person hiding.
Hmm.
And if you turn them outward, then you're exposing yourself to those around you, showing who you truly are. Or if when your hair is gray like mine, that's who I am. But if I go and dye it, then I'm covering up who I truly am.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the different perspective you can get with your reader.
Yeah. So and that happens as we just let the conversation flow naturally and let them get to the point where they're expressing themselves naturally. Okay, good. What else?
Yeah, I thought that was just a really cool depiction of what happens, right, with our readers. And I just thought that example was so beautiful. And, you know, we help set the tone for our readers when we allow a space for them to be honest and us to be honest with them as well. And that's how those conversations happen as well. And just being good listeners. And as Diane said, we have those conversations at the front, and it's just beautiful how they can just be incorporated into so many different lessons in different ways.
Right. Anything come to the rest of you when you think of this topic of building relationships during a session? Anything else at the top of your head that you think, well, this is important too?
I think it's important to find out what they are. Well, in my case, she always lets me know what she's praying about. And to me, that is the deepest part of our relationship, is our prayer life together. She prays for me, I pray for her. She has prayers all through the week with other people. So yeah, she's very dear to me. And
so, and maybe even if a reader isn't at that point where they're praying or thinking about it, just the idea of sharing personal concerns and
what they worry about,
worries.
I had to share a story with her because last week we didn't get a lesson because my electricity went out. And the reason my electricity went out wasn't because of a storm. It was because a possum got underneath my house and bit into my electrical cable. And she didn't know what a possum was, so I had to show her what a possum was and the teeth on the possum. So we share all kinds of things. When we're
Good. Anything else, Deb? I think you were going to say something.
Oh, my friend in Qingdao, we have this ongoing thing, and it might be in session, out of session, but we send pictures to each other. You know, she's able to do iPhone, at least to receive certain pictures I can receive from her. And we always start out the session discussing food, her latest restaurant thing, the latest something I've baked. What is her daughter's, talking about her daughter. We share videos. And so, you know, we do the lesson because that's been my focus, but we go for almost 2 hours.
Oh, sweet.
So, you know, and it is at the beginning, we have the lesson, and then we talk at the end.
Yeah.
Again.
Good. Well, I think, you know, a lot of what we talk about in our basic training, the core training that somebody goes through for FriendSpeak or LST Connect, tends to land in this arena of, we don't spend a lot of time talking about building relationships, but most of the principles sort of are rooted there in the session. How do we, because like the idea of expressing interest in them before you seek to express interest. I mean, find a way to get them to express before you just express everything you want to express. That still falls here in terms of relationship building. One way we build friendships is we show interest in the other person more than just wanting them to know more about us, you know. So these are all great reminders and good ideas and very practical. So let's jump to the outside the reading session. And here there's a pretty big difference between doing something in person like FriendSpeak or doing it online like a lot of us are doing. But group 2, what did you come up with?
Well, the things that we share together, and I don't mean share in person together, but you know, suggest that they might enjoy, kind of thing, like videos, and we share photos with each other. Joy mentions that she reads books, with her friend. They both read the same book and then discuss.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Uh,
Emailing on other occasions, you know, just to keep in touch during the week between lessons.
uh-huh, uh-huh,
Um,
uh-huh.
and sharing Christian music.
Oh, good.
Visiting in person if you can possibly.
Right, right.
But that doesn't happen much these days.
Those are excellent. I wanted to show this. I thought this was interesting. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Just a comparison of the different, not that one, but here. Are you seeing this top messaging apps by country?
Yeah.
Okay, this is just, I don't know how accurate it is. I think it's fairly accurate, but just as an example, I know that especially if you're working with a reader in another country who lives in another country and you're just figuring out ways to be in touch with each other, email for sure might be one way to do it. My experience is not every reader wants to use email a lot, and then texting is difficult because it's international rates. So people then use all kinds of different applications, third-party applications. But for example, here you see the lighter green, which is a little hard to distinguish on the screen, but the lighter green is where WhatsApp is popular.
Right.
All across Central and South America, and then lots of Eastern Europe, throughout Africa. Facebook Messenger, that blue, interesting, North America and Australia. I think you see several places in Europe, Western Europe, where that's popular. Of course, WeChat, the darker green, you only see there with China, but still used by billions of people. It's difficult to get a new account if you don't have one, but nonetheless, that's used. Others I don't know as well, like Line or Telegram. Kakao Talk is only right there in South Korea, but that's an app. If you have a reader from Korea, South Korea, you can get Kakao Talk, and they might enjoy communicating with you through that application. So you guys are doing more communicating with readers probably than I am, but I just wanted to remind us that there are lots of different applications, and sometimes a reader would be most comfortable using one of those third-party applications. Then that just means we have to learn how to use it as well. Then
We use WeChat
WeChat,
WhatsApp a lot.
WhatsApp, yeah. Good. Anything else about building relationships outside the reading session? These are very helpful.
Joy, did you want to add anything?
I thought you covered that really brilliantly.
Good.
I do often get questions from her because she is so advanced in her Bible knowledge, and I will send her additional lessons. I've taught for 30 years, overseas, so I can send her anything she asks me a question for, and she is voracious. She will just eat it up, and then we'll discuss it. So sometimes I feel like the Let's Start Talking lessons are too elementary for her. But I always turn it, and her desire is to be a missionary. So I always turn it, like, for instance, today we were in Acts 8 and Stephen was killed. Well, we turn it towards mission work. Not all of the things that you speak to people are they going to agree with or even like. And, you have to be patient. And we talk about that. We always twist it towards her interest in being
a great
missionary.
way to do it. Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So Deb and I talked just a little bit about building bridges to communities of faith. Um, when this topic is viewed through the lens of short-term mission, like a short-term mission team going somewhere and doing, let's start talking. That's usually more of a conversation we have with the local host because they'll do follow-up. And then when churches do friend speak, this happens fairly naturally because sometimes the reader is coming into the church building to do the sessions, or they meet other workers or other readers. You can invite them to activities that your church is doing, things like that. It's more challenging to think about with online readers for sure. So, Deb, how would you summarize? I mean, we didn't have a full conversation. We just had to stop, but how would you summarize our conversation about that?
I've always felt that it was very important to introduce my reader to other Christians, because we would meet for the most part at the church building. So they would meet the secretary, they'd meet the preacher. And, so I loved meeting in the office because you had to pass through a line of people that were always, very friendly and everything. So that and bringing them to meal, sharing meals, that there's half the churches there, so that that's always been a good outreach.
Yeah. And so I think, right now online, when we meet with readers online, I mean, I think we are predominantly the link for them until they become interested in taking another step of faith. Once there's a desire on their part to connect with a community of faith, then then they will be pursuing it, and we could connect them with a host in their country or their region or sometimes their city. So we have resources we could bring to bear there. It's just premature to do much of that until they are interested in it. It's something that they're interested in. So it may be until then that we are still the link for them and the illustration for them. And so we, like Deb says, maybe we just keep looking for ways, one, to build our relationship with them, but two, to let them meet other people who are Christians. And that may just happen organically. I mean, when they come to these LST meetups, which we've only been doing every other month, so it's not a lot, but when they do, they meet other Christian workers, they meet some other readers, like Kiki has participated in those. And when she does, it's clear that she's a Christian, that she has faith. And that's good for readers to see too, So those things can be helpful for a reader to meet other readers and other workers. And maybe like Deb mentioned, like a friend speak illustration where a reader who wasn't a Christian shared a little bit about some of her experience with a Christian group that had gathered. Well, I mean, that could happen with a reader that lives in China. You can bring them in online to share something about their story with whatever group you gathered in the U.S. You could still invite them, or even a lot of us are still doing online church. You can always invite your reader to participate if they want to. I know you struggle with the time difference and all that, but nonetheless, my main point probably is just that we're still the primary link there, and so we build our relationship with them, and maybe we just keep looking for ways to introduce them to other Christians, and then as they're ready and as they have a desire, then we can help them take next steps when they're ready for that.
Greg, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Do the on-site missionaries or workers know about, are they aware of people from their city or, yeah, from their
Yeah,
city that
yeah.
are studying with us? Or
Well,
reading?
I think typically right now, yes, I think because they are the primary ones who are pushing out any recruiting.
Okay.
And this year in 2021, we haven't done as much recruiting. And when we've suggested it, we've also suggested that they um, tell potential readers that if they're interested, to contact the host directly to get the registration link. I think in 2020, some hosts just pushed the registration link out, which is fine, but it meant that there wasn't always a direct, a first touch with them and then a second touch with us. So it's not true that in every case, not every reader has had a first touch with the host, no. But we're trying to move more that direction in terms of when we suggest.
Okay.
So I think predominantly yes. And last year several times through the year, we'd send out lists of readers to, like if we had a bunch of readers from Brazil, then we'd send it to a few Brazilian hosts, missionaries and national workers, and say, hey, here are readers involved online and they're in your general area. And if you'd like to follow up with them, feel free to do that, those sorts of things. So that's happening generally. It's just it's not happening. It's just happening differently, I guess. It's much different than when a team goes and does a project or when we do Friend Speak here.
How would we know if our student had been contacted by a local host?
I think you could just ask them.
Because the reason I'm asking is she talks about visiting missionaries, but I don't think she knows,
Yeah.
Who or
Who
what,
that would be.
where they're from.
Yeah. Well, and like, especially there, but other places too, it would not be helpful to say like, has somebody from the Church of Christ visited you? Because
Right.
it's probably not.
No.
At the church that we work with in Qingdao, well, I can't quite remember their name, but it's very different than Church of Christ. So I don't. Maybe if you send me an email, Joy, I can tell you the name of the church and the contact that we have, and you could probably just ask your reader directly. Hey, do you know this person or anybody from this church? And
Okay.
I mean that's one place we could start.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I think this is an area where we're learning. I think we all have a desire for other people to be involved in follow-up and help these readers. But I also know that just given the dynamic of working with somebody online, that we're still pretty much their primary relationship. And as they become more interested in, then they may seek other relationships, other doors will open for them. And God seems to always bless a desire to seek connection with other Christians. So part of this is a faith journey too. Well, I know we're right at the top of the hour. So let me come back to this principle. This was just a way to summarize. It sounds almost elementary school level to say, well, how does one person become a friend to another person? How does that happen? But I also know that Scripture spends a lot of time instructing us how to treat one another, and so Scripture must think that we need reminders from time to time about how we are to treat one another. So this was just one way to summarize that we build relationship with our readers by seeing them as valuable and treating them as valuable. The treating, I think we get very naturally. It's all the things that we've been talking about. What do we do? And the reminder there is just to be intentional about it, that we should consciously seek ways of developing relationship with our reader. The seeing them as valuable is a reminder that how we view them in our own heart matters as well. And you remember this story in Luke 7. It's in the Luke workbook as well, but where Jesus has dinner with a Pharisee, and a woman comes in with a bad reputation and anoints his feet. And then Jesus starts telling this little parable, perhaps to teach a lesson, perhaps also to draw attention away from the woman. But he tells the story and he interacts with Simon. And then at the end, towards the end of that story, as Luke has written it, Jesus turns to the woman and he says to Simon, "Do you see this woman?" And then he recites all the things that the woman has done for him that Simon did not do for him. And so Jesus chides the Pharisee, criticizes the Pharisee for not doing the right kind of things. But I think by asking the question first, he also critiques him for not seeing the woman as valuable. That really what was probably the issue for the Pharisee is what was in his heart, So we can do the right things, but I think we also want to think the right ways about our reader. And I know you guys do that, so it's not really a word to you, but it's just a reminder that even for us, little pieces of racism can creep into the way we think about other people who are different than we are, or just a sense of superiority, or little bits of stereotypes can creep into the way we view other people. And we don't want that to be the case. We don't want to not treat somebody kindly, or because of that, or we don't want to treat them kindly while at the same time we think sort of negative thoughts about them. We want to view them as valuable as we treat them as valuable, both those things to happen. So again, not so much a word to you guys, but maybe just to our broader group and other workers, that we want to be aware of what's going on in our hearts too, and how we think about other people, to see them as valuable and treat them as valuable. Very good. Okay, well, this has been helpful to me. I hope it's helpful to you, just to stop for a little bit and think about your relationships. And sounds like you guys are doing wonderful things with your readers, and that's very helpful for me to hear, for us to hear. And I've made some notes too, so I've captured some of your good ideas and the good things that you're doing. And I hope maybe there's something you heard tonight that's helpful to you, or at least encouraging to you to keep doing the good things that you're doing. We're always learning. Probably you're always learning too. So we're in that boat together.